Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to your favorite weekly show, The Weekly Host. This episode we are discussing the referendum question that's gaining momentum in the country. Do we really need a referendum? To put that into perspective with me today is the National Vice Chairman of the Supreme Council of Kenya, Supkem, that is, Hassan Naado, former Member of Parliament, Honorable Abdinoor, and Advocate of the High Court, Wakili Abdallah Mazrui. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I will start with Hassan Naado, because you are in the civil society, you're so much versed with these things. We have just come out of an election which was so acrimonious, so divisive, and a year later we are talking about referendum. Don't you think this is going to be explosive in terms of the political setup of the country, or do we really need a referendum? If I put it in simple terms.
Sincerely speaking, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin, Salatu Wassalam ala Rasulullah. This country at this point actually doesn't need a referendum. But what the political class have created, they've created a scenario that the acrimony that was there in the elections to 2017 this is the referendum extension of it. So they want to assume, or we want to assume as a country, that for us to get rid of what happened in 2017, we have to have this referendum. So there is somehow connections between what happened in the elections 2017 and the ongoing discussion about the referendum. They have tried to connect the two.
Now, talking of trying to connect the two, Abdinoor, you have seen all this, you have been in the last campaign and all these things. Right now, we are in a situation where we're seeing the building bridging initiative, where the two principles have come together and they want to build bridges. But the referendum question, if it comes in, already we have seen divisions.
I totally have a different view of the referendum issue against my colleague here.
Yes.
Yes, we require a referendum. One, to contain the issue of wage bill in this country. They're saying now the country has overborrowed 4.3 trillion shillings.
Yes.
And the rate of paying this amount of money is becoming difficult in our country. You are seeing the youth don't have employment. We have a huge overrepresentation in our country. One person is represented by a woman rep, an MP, an MCA, a nominated one, and a governor and a senator in our one county. So you have 6-7 representation against one single person. So we need to recheck some of these things, because these are man-made constitutions in our country. And to my view is it has to be reviewed for us even to control the wage bill in the long run. I agree we might have different political scenarios coming up in this referendum, because one team are for it, another team want to become against it regarding on the question. The question might have a lot of issues. That is the way people are surrounding. Everybody agrees we need to have a referendum in our country to check some of these issues, excesses we are having in our country in terms of spending and overspending and overrepresentation in our country, and huge public debts which are going on in our country. So we have a different scenario. Some political leaders are saying if we are doing referendum to create some positions for specific people. And that's why you see Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, when he joined the government, they are saying his main aim was to come and have a referendum, so that because the presidential system in our country is not working for him, so you need to have an executive prime minister. That is the only way he'll attain power to this country. So there are different views. But yes, we need to have a referendum. That's total.
Wakili,
yes.
This question of the referendum, and Mheshimiwa said about the question of how it should be put.
Yes.
Now, who should talk about referendum? Is it Wanjiku or the politicians?
I have a different view from both of my colleagues here. Yes. May Allah bless them.
Yes.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, this issue of constitution is a fundamental question. It should not be approached because of personalities. It should not be approached because of short-term issues. You understand?
Yes.
It is something that needs to be looked at carefully. Now, I'm not saying yes and I'm not saying no. I will be yes that there needs to be, but if we look at the philosophical values behind the constitution itself. Let me explain myself. The constitution, we went through a major, what we consider restructuring, a complete overhaul by 2010, remember? And there were many grandiose promises made. And all these issues about overrepresentation and also the issue of so many commissions and all that, they were there. But people were taken by waves. The issues, they were sick and tired of the old constitution and how it was being abused, and they thought that this new constitution would take them to heaven. You understand? So people just adopted it without thinking carefully about it. I'm not talking about Wanjiku alone. You know, you can't expect that Wanjiku, with all the daily issues she's dealing with, to be able to understand philosophically and in a deep manner what is going on. She'll just be told this constitution will give you no more corruption. This constitution will ensure that the cake is bigger for you to eat. She'll be taken by that. But I'm talking even the intellectual class and the political class. The political class is right. They look at these issues from their narrow interests. Really, that is a fact. Yes. Even today and tomorrow, and each one saying, if I adopt this constitutional referendum question, what do I get out of it? Not what is good for the country as a whole. No, looking from my partisan political perspective. But if the intellectuals, I blame the intellectuals here. You can't expect much from Wanjiku, and we know our political class. You shouldn't expect much from them. Okay. But the intellectuals of this country, have they really looked to see what is the problem? I agree there's a problem with the constitution. On that part, I agree with my colleague here.
And Mohammed talks about, and I'm directing this to him, he talk about, the reason why we should have a referendum is to check the depth and all these things. What guarantees that if we change the constitution, we are not going to have abuse of resources? Because if you check it right now, the biggest impediment to this country is not about even the constitution. Money will say it's not the constitution, but corruption. 3/4 of the country's budget, national budget, goes to corruption. If you have seen today's papers, 15 trillion Kenyan shillings in the Business Daily is siphoned out of the country. We are the second leading according to today's Business Daily. So this narrative of the constitution being a burden and people not talking corruption and all those things, do you think it's a narrow interest?
This is a narrow interest. That constitution will never do anything to do with corruption. Yes. If we change it 10 times, corruption will still be there, because these are different scenarios coming in. Constitution, if it's not implemented the way it will be, then the corruption issue will still be there, and money will go out of this country. So I think the political class, why they are pushing for the issue of referendum and everything, to my understanding is we had two issues in our country. One is resources. Number two is representations. The resources issue has been resolved by the devolved units. You're seeing everybody is coming from a county, and the county are getting some resources from the exchequer. So the issue is coming, the next one is the representation. Yes. That's why you are seeing one community are not included in the system, there's exclusivity. People are feeling that they're exclusive in the system. Yeah. And that's why they're pushing for the issue of expansion of the executive, so that at least we have a broader executive which everybody can have a take on that.
Sorry. Yes. And also I will after you. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. The issue of representation, I doubt whether the referendum will address it in terms of reducing the representation. Yes. It is a very thorny issue.
It's a charged topic, right?
It's a charged topic. Yes. And I'm speaking as a minority.
Yes.
As the Masai,
I was to ask you that question, and I just
when you talk about the reducing representation, mention the issue of reduction of the counties. Yes. It is actually, that will be the end of the referendum. Yes. And I'm sure those who are talking about the referendum knows that, and they will never touch that area. Yes. I started by saying we may not need a referendum, in my personal opinion, because the first question I ask myself, whose referendum? Why do we need a referendum? Who wants a referendum in this country? Who wants to change the constitution in this country? It is a political class. Nobody else has sat down on its own proper mind and decided that we need a referendum. We only started hearing these issues of referendum after the handshake. So which means, how can we then all of a sudden Kenyans say, hallelujah, we have now gotten the answer of the challenges that is facing our country? I think it is important that at the end of it, I think the Kenyan person, and I like what the Wakil was mentioning, the elites, or we can actually call it politically, the middle class of this country, middle class of Africa, are the big mess, because the middle class are living in the comfort zones. They have not really come out to state what they require. They prefer to be comfortable in the zones that they are in. Exactly, and sipping cappuccinos in Javas and other places. So what I think we need to do as a country, the time has come for us to speak to ourselves and try to stop being driven by narrow political interests. Because people who are basically driving the whole concept about referendum are only two people. But all of a sudden, Kenyans, we are now talking of referendum. We are now even talking of things we don't know. And I remember somebody saying in one of the groups I'm actually involved in, just trying to discuss about what could be the stake of the Muslim community in this country.
And, that is
and when I look at that, we have a small group, we have been discussing that for the last Believe me, for the last 1 week,
Yes.
we have no answer. You know what we are saying?
I know
we are saying,
yes.
why can't we wait until the question comes?
Yes.
So who is this person who's going to say the question?
Okay, go on,
Yeah,
Wakili.
sorry.
Yes.
This is why I said that there's the Wanjiku who will be whipped into emotions for against constitutional referendum,
Yes.
depending upon who her so-called leader is.
Yes.
Then you have the political class who's looking at their own interests. And you find that some of them have changed their position recently, isn't it?
Yes.
They said no, but now they're saying yes.
Yes.
And they say yes, depends on what? The question. Means they're saying perhaps we can manipulate this referendum issue to achieve our own interests.
Yes.
But I am challenging the intellectuals, those who truly believe they are thinkers.
Yes.
And thinkers who, as you said, not just comfortable thinkers who want positive change, including to sacrifice themselves if need be, but to bring positive change. There is a problem. Because it can't be that after only 8 years that people are confused, unhappy. After 50 years of a previous constitution, something is wrong. And I am challenging them to look, what is the philosophical underpinning of this constitution? And I agree with him that if you just change words on paper and come with a new constitution, the 2018 constitution, let us say, but we have not looked at the philosophical underpinnings, we are not going to solve corruption. Because the philosophy of this constitution in itself, it brings about corruption. Could I explain very quickly? It is a secular constitution. He's right, it's a man-made constitution. And man-made constitutions do not consider God or the hereafter. So it doesn't matter what you do and who we elect, so long as the values are not divinely based and not conscious of the hereafter. You elect me in this constitution, me, and I have all these powers in my hands, you will find I will not be the same person you used to meet with here.
Okay, and
the system is corrupt.
Yes, if I come in on that one, if you go to the Bomas draft, what most of the politicians are now pushing on is the Bomas draft.
Yes.
Because that was the draft which was addressing some of these issues. The issue of devolved units, and I really want to thank, you can't touch the counties, I totally agree with you on that.
Now talking about the counties,
because in the last parliament, in 10th parliament, when the constitutional amendments was being done, the committee
the 11th parliament,
sat for 3 days in KSG, Kenya School of Government, just to come up with the number of 47. The number committee recommended in the first stage was only 8. They say that let's turn the provinces to the counties. Now, the committee sat down several times and said, no, because Rift Valley is big, let's divide it into 3. Others say, no, let's do the lower western, upper eastern, coast for north coast and south coast. They were adding one by one until they reached 32. Then they said there's no need of, because everybody will now say we need our own. Let's do it 47 counties, the districts and everything.
Now, right now, we are being told...
And you see, people were against that, even that 47. But now people have gotten resources at lower levels, at grassroots levels. That's why they are sticking to it. So we are saying change is always good. Don't resist change. Now, if we amend the constitution, it will still be good for people.
Now, okay, now talking about amending, and Al-Haji said, touching the number of counties, is like stepping on a hot, hot wire.
Exactly.
That's fire.
Now Masais have Narok. Let me tell you, Masais have Narok and Kajiado. You tell them Narok will be in Nakuru and Kajiado will be in part of Taita Taveta or Ukambani. Then these guys will never, all the marginalized communities will be marginalized more in those big.
Now we are talking of again tritaya. Now, what is it tritaya, Mheshimiwa? And what is the cost implication? If we are about talking about reducing costs.
This is on the table. I'm sure there will be many other proposals, even reduction of the counties, reduction of number of MPs, reduction of even extending removal of the Senate. Extending time limits for governors to remove 2 terms to be lifeline and all something. So there are so many questions around the constitutions. Once this thing is being framed, it will be subjected to public participations, and public will participate and come up with the final documents. But my question is, let us not resist change. If change is good for the people, new constitution, people are against it for all those 50 years. But the last 8 years, people are saying it has done a lot for the people. So if we change this one to better it, we need to better it until we get a perfect document in our country.
Yes, Al-Hajj.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is that I think it will be too late for Kenyans to wait until the questions are set. This kind of a discussion is very important so that people can start identifying areas that needs a little bit of focusing. I understand from the lawyers, the lawyer is around with us here, that there is even a discussion in terms of reintroducing a discussion around the succession.
Yes, you're going to come to that. You're going to come to that. Succession politics.
Exactly. Not politics. I'm talking of the law of succession. Exactly. Which in a way will affect the functions of the Kadis court, because people are now looking at how people can have a choice. You know, as a Muslim, you are being told you can actually have a choice, either if you want to be subjected to the Qadis or you go to the Rafa. There is something like that that is coming up. And in a situation like when we are talking about the referendum like now, these are the things that Muslims need to look at, the pros and cons, and how can we tighten the gains that we have gotten before without losing and kind of stuff. And we should also not be carried away by the big things, the structure of governance, to an extent that we forget the values that Muslims stand for as a country. And I really want to urge the Muslim community to stand out, especially on this issue of morals, because we have seen, you remember 2 weeks ago, this issue of the
I would like to
film
cut it short. We're going for a short break.
Yeah.
We'll continue from there. I promise we'll continue from there.
I hope
my producer is on my neck. I would like to remind our viewers that we're still on, and today we're discussing the issue of referendum and how important is it to the, to the country in large, but also to the Muslim and the minorities in this country. We are taking a short break. As usual, we are also live on our Facebook page, that's Horizon TV Kenya. Twitter at Horizon TV Kenya, myself at Ahmedkadar 1. What's your Twitter handle?
Not yet got one.
Okay.
You have to guide me on that issue.
Noor K77.
Noor K77.
Or
Naado. He's too famous. You don't have to ask that. We'll be back. Keep it there.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Welcome back to the show. As usual, the weekly matters. Today we are discussing the issue of the referendum and whether we really need one in this country. Who else to discuss better that kind of question than the kind of gentleman you're seeing here? Before we went for break, we are having a chat, and the National Vice Chairman of the Supreme Council of Kenya, that's Supkem, Hassan or Naado, you have been talking about the issue of values. Please go on.
Yeah, what I wanted to stress to all of us as the community, that the community that stands for values is to be on the lookout so that those who are secularists in quotes doesn't have an opportunity of sneaking in certain issues that maybe were locked out by the previous constitution. Because you remember, there was a very strong opposition by the religious community then, especially the church, opposing the constitution because of certain issues. And the risk now is that we have certain secularists who are now emerging in this country, and they may actually take opportunity to grab, to push the agenda in what we are talking about, like the referendum. Exactly, the issues like the Urafiki and other things that are going on, especially also this particular aspect that I've mentioned of trying to dilute the Qadis court. And finally, on this subject is that as the citizens of this country, I think the time has come that we have to reclaim this country, because this country is in the hands of very few people, very, very few people. And these people can just sleep and decide what they want Kenya to go. And we find ourselves, all of us, the 40+ million people, caught up in a situation that we are even talking of things that we did not know January that we are going to talk about this year. Because I'm sure no Kenyan slept in January and thought of a referendum. Nobody. No. We were looking at different issues. But look at how we have been driven.
So we're being played around.
We have now accepted. We have
and
we have even now accepted. We are saying referendum is not a question of whether it will be done or not. It is a question of when. So, and you can see how it began. So what is it that we can do to reclaim this country so that it is us who decide where this country should go?
Good. Now,
I totally agree with you. And the politicians are using the emotions to drive the people so that at least they can accept these things. That's why they have built up the emotions of these people. And even now, the senior most politicians are accepting. They were refusing politicians, but they have seen the tempos in town and everything. And the public opinions are being shaped and everything. So they can't control it. There's a tsunami which is coming. So they had to accept it so that at least they can either manipulate the question or even now play with the outcome, how it should come out and all those things. But that's why I was telling, as Muslims, everybody has a responsibility over this. The Prophet said, "Kullukum ra' wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'iyati." Everybody has responsibility over this constitution and the amendment of this constitution. I'm sure the church are arranging themselves so that at least how they can attack those questions of the Hadith Court. I remember last time it was very difficult even to come through to that stages for it to give a ruling that for it to be voted and all those things. So as Muslims, the lawyers, the professionals, the political leaders, the Muslim leaders in this country, everybody should be on the lookout. And any gatherings we go into or all the meetings we go into, let's see how this being done so that at least we can go against it. Because if it is against the Muslim Ummah, then all the Muslims should oppose it. And we have numbers and proper representation in both the national and the Senate and the counties. Muslims have now a say in all government positions in this country. So it is upon everybody, not only the leaders, elected leaders, or nominated leaders, or Muslim leaders, or the professional lawyers and everybody. Every Muslim has a responsibility to protect the Muslim interest in this country.
Yes, Wakili. Yes, some of the points they have raised are very good points, by the way. Fantastic. He has pointed out, our brother Haji Naado has pointed out a reality, which is that at the end of the day, despite the what I call the charade of democracy, because there's this idea people are told that Wanjiku is in control, that the majority rules, but yet Wanjiku doesn't want the taxes. Are they here or they're not here? They're here with us. Because a few have decided you will be taxed more. You like it, you don't like it. SGR, you were not consulted, but now you're paying for it. There's this new road from Mombasa to Nairobi, you will pay for it. All these things. What I'm saying is, historically, from the colonial times, and then when power was supposedly handed over to local leaders, reality was neo-colonialism. There was a deal between the old system and the incoming elite, how they can both profit and take. Until today, what he said is right. It's just a few who run this country politically and economically. And only these few, they will allow change, including constitutional change, only when they're sure it protects their interest. It fits their interest. Because say what we can, but the change is good. But if you think about it, 8 years after the new constitution, with these constitutional commissions, which we were told were given teeth to bite. That's what we were told. Do you remember? That's why we were told they must be entrenched in the constitution so that they're independent and nobody can push them around. Somebody will tell you that today corruption is worse than when it was. So how can it be that supposed with a progressive constitution that corruption is a worse disease than we had?
I mean, Wakili, come now, in that aspect, comes the issue of dilution of the constitution. The 2010 constitution, what experts and political pundits will say has been diluted through legislation. Our brother here served in the last parliament, and I'm sure he's privy to many things. For instance, the National Police Service. And the appointing authority, and the function of the executive when it comes to appointing authority or controlling the police force, which was comes to the National Police Service Commission. How do you see all this? And do you think even changing the current constitution again will better anything? Having seen how it is.
That is why I mentioned that it's the philosophy which is important and the values, because it doesn't matter what you put on paper. We could have the constitution which we should be agitating for, which is the constitution of Islam. The Quran and the Sunnah and the rules that are revealed with economic and political, which take care of everyone, by the way. They don't only take care of Muslims, because the Muslim leader is accountable before Allah and before his people. He's accountable for even 1 cent. If he misspends it, he's accountable for it. We will not interfere with the people's religions, isn't it? We'll take care of their interests. So that's what we should be agitating for. But let me tell you, if our values are corrupted, even if we bring the constitution which the Rasulullah ﷺ came with, and we have the current political elite with this constitution, we are going to go nowhere. If the values are corrupt, it doesn't matter how beautiful the structure is. So the values, I'm telling you, are corrupt from the beginning and have not been tackled properly.
That's why the Islam is coming in. The only institution which can correct the values of this country is the
Absolutely.
That's why our Muslim scholars need to take the upfront on educating the younger generations who are coming up, because they're all already spoiled. They're in this game and they're in the swimming pool. There's little you can do about it. They're understanding me. So the young guys who are coming up need to be taught the values of Muslims, that you can't take money from someone, and you can't steal, you can't lie, you can't there are so many things which Islam teaches. So those are the things we should be even included in our schools, in our local schools at grassroots level, so the young guys can come up with it.
Now, Mheshimiwa, you're a young leader, like most of you. I know he has grey hair, but I know he's still young. He's
young at heart.
Young at heart. Yes. The question I want to ask you is, yesterday, the former vice president of this country, Honorable Stephen Musyoka, Kalonzo Musyoka, was caught in the press saying that he wants to have the constitution amended, and he said he also believes it should be now. And then he said, if you ask me, I don't think the Senate should be dissolved. There has been this call of the dissolution for the Senate. And if you look historically, our first Senate was dissolved after independence. Now, why are we agitating for the decision of the Senate, which has just few members, and by the way, which is, most people will say that better debates happen there than the National Assembly. Why can't you, and what is this dissolution of the Senate all about? Where do you want to kill devolution?
You know, the issue of, I totally disagree to dissolve the Senate, because Senate is protecting the interests of the counties. It's overseeing the counties and all those things. I agree we need to, you know, cut down our expenditures as a country and all those things so that we can control our wage bill and all those things. But, you know, even the National Assembly, if you remove the nominated members of Parliament, the National Assembly and the Senate, that alone can even save 30-20 billion shillings in our country. So removing the Senate from the equation is something which is not good for the counties, and it's something which is not good for our country. Because if you look at the Bomas draft, in fact, in the Bomas draft, Senate was the executive house. Anything originates from the lower house, which is now should be the National Assembly, and then it is, you know, so that for check and balances, members of the National Assembly can do anything. Senate was created to do check and balances, so that it can have a final say before the president sent to any bill or all those legislation. But when they came to Naivasha, they removed that, because all the guys who were there were members of Parliament. There was no senators to protect the interests of the Senate. But now I'm sure
most of them are now in the Senate.
But now they are senators. They are
Senate, and they're saying they don't have powers. Yes, the Orengos of this one.
Let me jump onto that discussion about the Senate. Those of us during the constitution making process, we were actually not calling Senate. We were calling it the House of Tribes. Why we decided to call it that way in the campaigns outside there, we were seeing Senate as a representation of the Kenyan people. Different communities. And we expected, and that is when you look at the 47 counties, those 47 counties represent tribes actually. We assume that we have been kind. We don't want to mention some of these things. But if you look at it carefully, you'll find that actually those are the tribal units. So to us, outside there, when we were looking at it from the minority perspective, we were seeing a scenario where we are going to have one member of every community in this country sitting in Senate to protect the interest of their people without an extra vote. Why we thought that way? Because we know the manipulation of democracy, as have been mentioned here, will actually sometimes denies representation certain communities. So we are saying for those communities who may not have representation at the lower level, at least are assured of a senator at this level. And the Senate is in charge of the resources of the counties. So to us, we knew that counties are going to benefit, they are going to give resources because they have representation at that level. So it was not even important. We were not seeing then National Assembly as important as Senate, because that was the heart of the protection of the minority interest in this country.
That is why Kalonzo is even pushing the amendment of the constitution to happen even now. All these guys are outside and they are
in the court.
And you know, once the momentum of amendment of the constitution and these things happens, there's a lot of rallies and all functions which are coming in the country. Even meetings, from one meeting to the other, they'll be busy. So they want this thing to happen now so that at least we have enough time to think for 2022 elections. But I totally disagree, because currently, for even the next 1 year, our country is already in debt. You know, in terms of debts and all those things. We have overborrowed as a country. And the repayments of those loans, some of them are unable even to repay it. That's why you're seeing the taxes are being raised and all those things. For us even to have a referendum, we need about 12 to 15 billion shillings in a country. So even raising that money is a bit difficult, because only the 8% will raise 30 billion shillings. That 30 billion is supposed to be something else, not even free primary education, free healthcare and all those things. So if you go back to the referendum issue, it will be very difficult for that even to have.
Now, Mheshimiwa, Wakili, as you say, what you have to say.
It's no problem.
Yeah, okay. As you have to say what you have to say, I will talk about the issue of, we are being told the referendum. Yet some are saying we have to implement the Big Four agenda. Is Big Four agenda just, is it really or is it just a smoke screen?
In reality, it sounded good. It sounds good, because who's going to refuse people being housed and being educated and health? Nobody will refuse it as a matter of principle. But the practicality of the ground, you don't see any real change. So you're not sure whether it was just slogans for the sake of gaining votes, because that's democracy, isn't it? Democracy is that the person who whips the most numbers, whether through tribal sentiment or by being the most clever at speaking, and then when it comes to power, there is no check. You know, if you study secular legal theory, they tell you that the mandate that the ruler takes to power does not bind him. You cannot sue. Do you know you cannot go to a court of law and say we voted for him because of the Big Four agenda, but he's not delivering. Can you please remove him from power so that we can? No court of law will entertain that. They'll tell you that is politics and has nothing to do with reality. This is the question of divorcing values and morals from what? From politics. This is secularism. Secularism is a very dangerous thing. It sounds good to people if you don't think about it carefully, but the reality is very dangerous because you have people who have no morals and no values selling a manifesto to you for the sake of your vote, but once they come to power, they can do what they will because the letter of the law puts him in power.
Yes.
Finish.
Now, Al-Hajj, talking of values and principles, we have a whole chapter called chapter 6 of the Constitution, which talks about values and principles, who become leaders and what. And if you see the kind of leaders we have, do you think we really apply the Constitution when we are electing, or even the ones who are supposed to admit it, those who are supposed to be elected?
Actually, chapter 6 of the Constitution is the most abused.
Yes.
It has never seen the light of the day.
Yes.
Because one of the things when I started talking about the need for Muslims to stand up and, as the people who actually protect the values, because that is the core of our religion, is because these values that sometimes we try to put in place as a country and say, this is what we want to be, this is what this could be our reflection, is not working. Because you have a situation where someone is known to have stolen.
Yes.
Is a thief.
Yes.
And the Constitution closes, or the people in power closes their eyes and pretend that they have no idea that this person have ever stolen anything. And then we have that person getting in the office to their senior positions, either elected or nominated with their form or appointed by the state to run or whatever. Right. So you find that then what is the purpose of whole chapter 6 of the Constitution? This issue, the routine issue of getting documents from the from ethical and the corruption, whatever. Commission. This it has just become a formality, but it actually doesn't hold any water because you cannot. We know people. We know ourselves. We know well. And we have seen people how people are getting into places. Yes. There is this now the emergence of this. Theft of academic papers, which is all over there.
So now it's becoming a very big thing.
And people we have no morals. We cannot even really
question them.
We cannot question them. We are just quiet and we are comfortable with what is happening.
We have to question our morals. We have to question things. We have to ask people. We are going for a short break and coming back for our final segment. But as usual, we are also live on our Facebook page. That's Horizon TV Kenya. Twitter at Horizon TV. Myself at Ahmedkadar 1. Keep it there. We'll be back.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Welcome back to the show. As usual, it's Friday and your favorite show, The Weekly Matters. Mheshimiwa, before we went for break, we have been talking about so many issues concerning the referendum. But there's this particular aspect that people seem not to understand. The three-tier government. We are talking of punguza mzigo. We are talking of reducing counties. We are talking of dissolving the Senate. Yet again, we are talking of three-tier government, increasing the size of the government. What does that mean for the sake of our viewers and make us understand?
That was brought up by the Right Honorable former Raila Amolo Odinga.
Yes.
And he wanted to entice everybody around the constitution so that people can accept it.
Yes.
And now they have accepted. That's why you see the governors were told you will have your time limits will be removed and all those things. Yes. And then you'll have after governor there will be a regional head which will head on that before the national government and the executive comes in. So you'll still have a position up there. Yes. You can go for it. And this thing we're enticing people and political class so that at least they can go for it. And now they have gone for it. But I'm sure in the long run, this is something which will going to end and it won't see the light of the day because what they're interested more in is the expansion of the executive so that at least it can be extended and everybody can be included.
Get a position
exactly in that one. So all these other ones is to entice so that at least you can whip the emotions of the Kenyans to accept the constitution. And I think the end product is that proper representation at the top level. That is what everybody is looking at. Most of the political class, they're looking at that end, but not at what is at the lower level.
Yes. Yes. Now in Wakili, there is a group of people who say we don't need a referendum. And the argument is that many provisions of the constitution
Not being applied.
has not been realized. What will you tell them?
Yes. As I said, the issue depends what type of referendum you're talking about, yes, as I said before. If we're going to have a referendum which is a charade, which is just simply trying to get more positions in certain centers of power, like the executive, so that some people who are currently left out in the cold can come in, definitely there's no need for such. But if you're talking about, are we going to have what I want is an honest debate, a sincere debate amongst people who are not targeting a certain specific interest, narrow interest, who are going to really look, what is wrong? How come we've gone through all this as a country, we call ourselves independence, and we changed and overstructured the constitution? You know, let me tell you something which may be interesting for many viewers. Virtually no country has gone through a radical overhaul of constitution without a war taking place. Do you know that? Okay. Kenya tried to do something which is rare. But in the end, it didn't really do it, because you know why it happens out of war? It is because the war disrupts so many things that it forces people to think afresh. Yes. Now, I think we went through a constitutional referendum and restructuring without really thinking afresh. We did not address fundamental questions. So we were addressing questions at the top, superficial, but we did not look deep down. As I said, if our values and philosophy is the same, if we're still going to be tribalistic, if we're still going to be corrupt, what does it matter what constitution we have? If still that is the way we're going to behave. If we're not ready to challenge ourselves and question ourselves and have a vision of who we want to be, then it's a waste of time. But if we're going to have a discussion, a real, honest, sincere discussion, not led by political elite for their interests, and Wanjiku participates to the best of our ability, and let the intellectuals come with clear vision and idea and try to sell it. If we have that type of discussion, well and good. But if it's going to be a discussion led by political elite, which is going to be costly, 12-15 billion, as far as I'm concerned, seems to be cheap. It will probably be more than, you know how cost overruns in our country are. Then you talk about the time which is going to be spent on this issue. So we could spend years and a lot of money which we don't have right now, and then we end up with a constitution after a few years, we're going to have the same discussion. It's not working, it's overburdening us, you understand? So unless we have a sincere, honest discussion and look to the core values we really want, then in reality, we're just wasting time and we're being pushed by people who have their own agenda.
Okay, Al-Hajj. We have been talking about the relation in the likely event of having a referendum. It's people coming up to dilute the Qadi's position and the interest of the Muslim in the constitution. At the same time, I ask that we have many organizations that represent the interests of Muslims in this country who work at cross purpose sometimes. How can we bring that together for the common interest and common purpose of the Muslim community in this country? So
I think I can now. What we are doing at Supkem, you know, Supkem have been also having a lot of challenges of its own. Yes. And I'm glad that we now have a new leadership and they're trying to focus.
And we're also proud of you being the national vice chairman, especially the young Muslim of this country.
Thank you. So what we are trying to do is to reach out, which has not been a tradition before. We are trying to reach out to Muslim organizations, Muslim individuals, professionals, because this particular question you cannot take it alone, because you may actually end up messing up the whole process. It is important that we do a kind of broad-based kind of engagement so that we can have a position that is acceptable across the board. There are a number of issues that people are waiting to see in the so-called question, which to me, in my view, we should not wait until the question comes out. We need to do them now. One of the things that we want to see ourselves in is what is that the Muslim community of this country can stand out and say, this is what we want in the new constitution, in the referendum. These are the kind of questions we expect in the referendum than waiting someone else to do so. Because if they do that, they'll actually end up protecting what they already have. Because we don't really afford to lose what we already have. More importantly, what I wanted to say is that there are a number of campaigns that have begun in this country. We know the Punda Imechoka, Punguza Mzigo, yeah, exactly. And then there is now the political agenda, which is the only group that has spoken in the same voice, like the political class, is NCCK. Because NCCK came out very clearly, and they said what they require is the expansion of the leadership at the national level. They have not mentioned anything else on the lower level. They are very keen in the creation of the Prime Minister's office. They have also spoken about the need of a strong or an office of the official opposition leader with almost equivalent powers with whatever, because they want to make it comfortable for you to become wherever is going to be there, so that you will not see yourself as you have been left out as a loser. Yes. They want you to be occupied there. It may sound nice in quotes at the national level, but it may not really address the challenges we are facing as a country. We have the old issues about the taxes. You know what's happening at the moment. It is very difficult for a mama at the rural level even to get the paraffin. It's very expensive. Yes. It is actually cheaper to buy petrol than actually buying paraffin at the local kiosk at home. Exactly. These are the things that people are so as Muslims, we need to weigh options, look at what others are saying, and then we also put ours forward, and more importantly, build bridges with others. We succeeded last time in the bombers because of the lobbying we found ourselves in. We were able to engage the minority groups because we share a lot of things in common. You take this, give us this, take this, give us this. The same process is going to provide another opportunity. I want to urge all of us, especially those of us in civil society, those of us in religious organizations representing Muslims, let us not work for the cross purpose. Let us work for one unified voice that will be able to address the interests of the Muslims of this country.
I totally agree with him. The Muslims leaders, especially the religious leaders, have a responsibility over this issue. Because all now NCCK are coming up with their own draft so that the issues, the areas which need to be addressed, they're pointing out. I'll also urge the Muslim leaders, even including ourselves as political leaders, to come up with a proper draft, the areas which is having issues with the Muslim Ummah. So that until, tomorrow, it will be give and take. You bring something on the table, others bring, then there will be exchange on the issues which are we going to be on to have it final draft. So as Muslims, let's not sleep, let's not wait for the final. I totally agree with him. Let's come up with a draft and issues and areas which are affecting Muslims as we speak now, especially on the security issues.
Security,
we need, the extrajudicial killings. Yes. There are so many issues around that, and that issue of security, which are really affecting the Muslim Ummah. The issue of ID registrations and passports and birth certificates is having a problem in this country, especially for the Muslim Ummah. They can't go to school, they can't go to universities, they can't even travel out of the country. Even elderly, they're going for vetting when they're going for the Hajj and everything. So there are so many issues around the immigration of our country and then security laws, which are needed even to be lifted so that at least we can address the Muslim Ummah. So Muslims should also not sit back, they should write a draft, so at least when the political class are ready, they present their documents to the Muslim political leaders in the National Assembly and the Senate, so that at least they have a backing of the political leaders. I totally agree with him, because he said you need to bring all the Muslim organizations together. And Allah says in the Quran, "Amruhum shura bainahum." You have to have shura on the final decisions of the Muslim Ummah. You need to bring them together so that at least everybody participating in the process. Thank you.
And Wakili, it's good that Mheshimiwa has mentioned the issue of IDs, extrajudicial claims.
Yes.
We all of us here from regions where Muslims
we have issues, serious issues.
Especially now, let's talk about the issue of extrajudicial killings, disappearance, and very important documents like ID and passport he has mentioned.
Right.
Yet we have talked about some minutes ago the division of some of the powers within the constitution, where we can make use of the issue of the police and all this stuff. How do you see these things?
I see it as tied up to the fact that the people who are supposed to, this constitution purported to bring values, but they were not imbibed by the people who ran the show. So that unless we don't, I would say, I'm listening to what my brothers are saying. I suggest we look to this situation, which has been forced upon us, but as an opportunity. The Chinese have a saying, the way they write their writing, that sometimes that which represents risk or threat, if looked at from a different perspective, is actually opportunity. Wallahi, we have an opportunity. Kenya is suffering. Kenya, Africa, the third world is suffering from the weight of corruption, is suffering from tribalism, is suffering from abuse of power. I think we all agree on this table here that the only message which can solve this problem practically is Islam. Means we have a message that the masses need, not only Muslims, the masses need. We need to take this opportunity to say, these things you're suffering from, let us give you our perspective, how to deal with them. That we're all created by one Lord. There's no superiority in race or in gender or in tribe. That a leader is a servant who is going to be, as you said, Ra'in, wa huwa mas'ulun and ra'iyati. That's a leader. A leader is a shepherd, and he'll be responsible for his flock, isn't it? You can't succeed as a leader if I have billions in my account and my people cannot buy paraffin, as he's saying. This is failure. Doesn't matter how much you have. We have our agenda. We need to force our agenda onto the national discussion. Believe me, the masses will appreciate what we're saying.
Thank you. Now, we are going to wind up this discussion. I know we will talk and talk. And
yes.
I will always look forward to have you once again, Al-Haji and the rest. Now, I will start with you. And I'll request, I'm going to ask you a question, but you answer this question as you also give us your parting shot. Then we go to Wakili, and then Al-Haji winds up for us. I've asked you a question before, and I'm repeating the same question. Political succession. The Deputy President said no to the referendum when the former Prime Minister started this discussion. All of a sudden, the other day he said, I am for it. What changed? And is this a strategy for him to meet his game plan as you give us your also parting shot for the whole discussion that we had? I think this is a strategy for him, and it is the best decision he has made, because you can oppose the entire country if they have decided to go this direction, and you oppose. It will be very difficult for him. Number two, it will be very costly. It will be now some teams will be new, the entire teams will go to the other side. Everybody will pull up his teams to his side where the direction want to go. So I think for the DP, it's good for him because he could have two elections. You could have a referendum and also the main election, which he want to become the presidential candidate of the Jubilee Party of Kenya. So for him, it is the best move he has ever made. And I think where I sit as a politician, that was a good move he has made. On the final and to conclude on these things, I really want to urge Muslim leaders. Especially as you talk to the young Muslims. Yes. Really want to urge the Muslim Ummah, especially the younger generations who are coming up. If the leaders are failed, you're not supposed to fail and all those things. Yes. Now, 80% of the universities in their country, 30% are Muslim students which are in the universities. That is a good image, compared to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when we have only 2-3 professors in our country who are Muslims. We have lawyers, more than 1,000, 2,000 lawyers in this city who are Muslims, and that is a good number which is coming up. The universities, we have so many institutions of Muslim Ummah University is one of them, RAF University is one of them. I think the Malaysians are coming also, the Islamic University of Malaysia. They're doing online courses now, and they're setting up, I think, very soon in Nairobi. So there are so many institutions where Muslims which are coming up. So I will urge the young generations to benefit from these institutions and even the scholarships which are being offered around them, so that at least the only way we can change our community and our country is to have education. Because all the prophets, they used, the only dua that was across board for the prophets is Rabbi zidni ilman wa ahtuni bi salihin. Zidni ilman is knowledge. Wakili,
yes.
We also don't have time.
Yes, I understand.
Less than a minute.
Okay, my parting shot is that this agenda is an agenda driven by a few individuals for their own selfish interests, but we should take advantage of it to deliver our da'wah to the society. Wallahi, the message of Islam is not an individual and family message. It is more than that. Of course, it addresses the individual, addresses the family, but it also addresses the society and the whole nation. We have an agenda, wallahi, if we understand Islam correctly, we can deliver it to the people. They will see a way out, because it's like they're running around in a circle and they don't seem to come out of it. And wallahi, without Islam, there's no salvation. We need to deliver Islam as a salvation to the masses.
Thank you. Al-Hajj, give us your parting shot, less than a minute. My producer is on my neck.
Yes.
And winding up the constitution thing and your personal perspective.
Yes, I just want to urge us, as the Muslim Ummah in this country, that let us not take chances. An opportunity has been presented, as the Wakili has said, let us grab it. Let us not really tire in terms of saying that we have been voting, we have never seen results out of this. Let us also not live in utopia that we are not part of this country. Let us see ourselves as citizens number one of this country, so that we can actually make informed choices. Because we cannot afford to allow such an opportunity to go by just failing to engage and work with other people. Let us work with the rest and try to find ways of how we can address the challenges.
Let us work with the rest and find a way on how to work with others. Those are the parting shots of Al-Hajj. Is the last person to have closed for us. And as you have seen, we had a very interesting conversation. Let's do this till again, as usual, every Friday, 8 p.m. And thank you. Keep it there.
Jazakallah khair.